Screen frozen. Ready to go? Right, thank you very much to everyone for coming again. I know a lot of people have been saying it's really nice to see this space in the light for the first time because we're not doing a meetup in the middle of winter, which is great. I'm hoping this clicker is going to start working soon, otherwise I might be in a bit of trouble. But just quickly to introduce, you know, the social code and everything like that. First of all, thank you to everyone for coming. First thing that I want to say, both to everyone here and on the stream, in the last 2 weeks, we've now hit over 2,000 members UK wide, which is ridiculous considering, you know, where we started and where we've got to. So, you know, I want to say a big thank you, first of all, to everyone in the community for getting involved in this, to continue to support the events, everyone who keeps tuning into the streams and everything like that. Honestly, it's really appreciated that you keep making this happen, because couldn't do it without everyone's interest from there. This is not working. Now, next slide, please. So, quick overview for those of you who've not been here before about why the social code community exists and what we're trying to do. This is very much focused on becoming sort of a knowledge sharing platform. It's not about being a deep dive, about being anything extra. It's about giving everyone the opportunity to learn, to be a community, and to sort of get involved and learn what they want to. And I know that we've got people right the way through from just beginning their junior developer journey at the moment to, you know, being in tech for 30 years. And that's fantastic to see. And it's great to see that everyone feels they can get something out of this. Just quick about me. If you want to catch me on any social media, I'll post anything about the next events here. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. That's my email. There's not too much more to go from. Before we get back onto the talk, go back one slide, please. Just go back. In fact, go back two, because it's not just about me. Before we get onto the talks, particularly for the people in the room tonight, I just want to give our sponsor for the evening a quick shout out and a chance to say thank you. Steve from Fluent Money here has very kindly put up the money for the beer and all the pizza that you'll be having this evening. Just want to give him 1 second to quickly introduce himself, and so we can all say thank you for the next one.
You're welcome. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Steve. I'm CTO at Fluent Money Group. We're not very well known in Manchester, but we're a mortgage broker. We're based in Bolton. We're a fast-growing fintech business with nearly 500 people working there. We build all our own tech, and really we wanted to sponsor this evening so that we could basically just join the community and be part of some of these values that Ross is talking about. I think Adrian has presented at SocialCode once before. This is the second, or is this your trick? Definitely done one. Definitely done.
In its previous guys have done two more. So this is
okay,
fourth.
So this is his fourth. So he's a seasoned pro, right? But one of the things that one of the values that we adhere to at our place is around simple done well, best in class engineering, and that's why I'm really keen to be involved in this and sponsor the event, because if we can, if our guys can learn from you guys, if we can share knowledge like what Ross has put on the slide, then it's for the greater good. And I know that the people that I work with at our place are going to benefit. So thanks for letting us do it, Ross. And yeah, let's have a lovely evening.
Cheers for the beer and the pizza. I think that's the thing everyone's going to be appreciating. So just as we're getting on to our first speaker, like we've mentioned before, Adrian has spoken at a couple of these. A few people know his face. I do want to say a massive thank you to Adrian. Unfortunately, one of our other speakers had a situation that meant they had to pull out 10 days before this event. And there's no one who responds better when you know he's had a few pints than Adrian. When you say, can you please do a talk for me on 10 days notice? Yeah, I've got nothing prepared, but I'll give it a go. It's even better when you remind him the morning after and he remembers he's got to do it. But no, Adrian, I'll give you the chance to get yourself set up. You've got a title slide there, Lauren, just so that everyone can see kind of what we're covering. But for the first time in a long time, we're going to do something that's a little bit more demo heavy, but is still going to be agnostic enough that everyone can understand. Yep. But Adrian, I'll let you take it away and go from there. For anyone on the stream as well, we'll just be taking a second to switch over laptops so Adrian can demo this.
Big to me, but I'm right next to it. Yeah. Okay, so as Ross said, I didn't have too much time to prepare this talk. So this is something that I gave a talk on internally at Fluent Money. So I've got rid of all the Fluent specific stuff and just repurposed it all for this. There might be a few people here today who, after listening to everyone I said, will just tell me that, oh, that was obvious. But it was a light bulb moment for me, and I've been developing for quite a while now, and it's only recently that I've come across this way of working with Docker images and Docker Compose, and it's been really useful. And the team found it useful when I presented it to them as well. So hopefully it's not obvious to everyone else and you actually learned something from this. So the way that I've always seen Docker Compose used previously was that when you created a few microservices, you just create a Docker Compose file, which has the dependencies in there. So you've got your things like Mongo databases and stuff that just use the images from Docker Hub, and you go down to your services where you tell it where the Docker file lives and where the build context is, and that will build up all of your Docker images and start running them with all the ports. So you're telling it which ports to run on and all of that kind of thing, and you just do that. So every single service that you've got in here with how to build it and how to run it, and that's fine, right? So if we does work. So if we just go and actually run the Docker Compose up on this file, so it's going to go through, build all the images and start everything up, and we can see it works. All the services are running. It's exactly what you want it to do. So it's perfect. So this is all just your local code has been built, and we can even go and attach a debugger to it. If I go into one of the projects, go in and just select the Docker attach, go in, select a service, and it will, once it's copied the debugger in, it'll start debugging. It all works, right? There's nothing. It seems like that's completely fine, but that's when you've got 5 services running. It works fine for small projects. The more and more that you add, the more microservices you add, the more complex this becomes. Builds start taking ages. Your laptop will just slow down to a complete crawl, and it just starts to get really messy. So I've seen people try and get around this by creating multiple Docker Compose files, and just so for different things you want to debug, and then you've just got multiple Docker Compose files, and then you've got your dependencies multiple times and how to build them across multiple files. It just became a mess, and that is kind of how I've always seen it used before. And I've seen it, and quite a lot of the time gave it a go, thought this isn't really working for us, so we just stopped using it and just went back to honestly just running the images and just pointing them to UAT services to test them. It's just the easiest way to go. But yeah, so we started running into a few problems. Like we've been recently, we've been going through and raising the security of all our services, and so it's actually becoming increasingly hard to just connect up to our stuff in UAT from our laptops now. So it made me go and think, right, we need to take another look at this and see if there's anything better that we can do. And I actually read through the documentation for Docker Compose, which is something I hadn't done before. I've been sleeping on it for quite a while, thinking, it's a bit basic for this. And went on to more exciting things like Kubernetes and stuff like that. And yeah, and just thought, Docker Compose isn't powerful enough, like for, we're using it for everyday use for big projects like this. It turns out it is if you actually read the docs and see what it can actually do. So the first thing that I looked at was, so the build times. So every time you run this, if I can get this to disappear, there we go. So every time you do a Docker compose up on a Docker compose file that looks like this, it's going to go through and build all of your images. Fine when you've got 5 services. When you get to like 20, 30, it starts to slow everything right down. So if you're using Docker images, most likely you're pushing them up to a repository somewhere. So why not just use those for your dependencies? Quite a lot of the time, you don't actually need the latest version of your code running dependencies, as long as it sort of matches near enough what you want for the application that you're actually debugging. That's most of the time, that's fine. So instead of having all of these builds, why not just have a Docker compose file that looks a bit more like this? So still got all of our services in there, but instead of showing us where to build it, we actually just have an image name that points to an actual registry somewhere. It'll just pull it down from there. So now, first time you run it, it's got to download the images, obviously, but that's the first time. And every time after that, you'll see, okay, I've already got that image, and just start up really quickly after that. So yeah, so that works now. So we have. All right, well, yeah. Yeah. Heard about the free pizza. Yeah, so we can see that these were the local builds that are currently running. So if I just take the new Docker compose file and run that one instead, so if I just get rid of this and run that one, so it's not actually doing any builds anymore. So it's not doing any of that. It's just using the images that I've already had, that I've already downloaded from the repo, and it starts up all nicely. So that was the first step. The next thing is that you're just running every single application all the time when you're just doing that. Like, again, fine when you've only got 5, but when you've got to start getting a load more services, it really does slow down your laptop quite a lot, having that many containers running at one time. So Docker Compose, and I think this is going to be one of the things that people think are obvious, but I didn't realize for years, which you can actually just pass in which services you want to run into it. So if I just go back and stop this, let's just stop everything. So let's just say I just wanted to run the Mongo database that I've got. So we can just do that and just pass in, what do I call it? Just Mongo. So you can just pass in Mongo like that, and it'll only start up the Mongo container. You can pass in multiple of them. So I've got a Mongo Express, which is like a web UI to go in front of Mongo. So you can pass in that as well, and that'll start up both of those services there. I mean, that's fine, just passing them in all of the time. But you've also got it's quite hard with everything being so big. There we go. Come on. There we go. So in the compose file itself, you've got the depends on that you can do. So for example, this payment service depends on the Mongo database. We can just go, so if I just stop everything again, and run that, and let's just go for the payment service. So by having that depends on, it will start up only the services that you need. So we've now got to a point where just with those couple of changes, we can start up the service that we want to debug just by telling it that service, and it will start up any dependencies it has just by itself, just from the configuration that you've got in the compose file. But this is only currently working with images that are in your repo. You can't, there's no way at the moment to make a code change and go and test out whether that's worked or not. So what you can do for that is you can actually pass in a second compose file in order to override it. And then I think this is where it starts becoming extremely powerful. Oh, I wanted that. So this is one of my projects. If I go over to the files. So this is for the payment service. So in the main Docker Compose file, it's just pointing to an image up in that's just running in Azure. But we can just get a second compose file, which is just exactly the same syntax as the main compose file. So we just got our services, and we just pass in the same service name, the service that we want to deploy. Override the image, so it's not looking at a remote image anymore. So this is just payment service. So this is just a local image. And give it a name, and then we can actually set the build stuff in here, and that's going to override what is in the main compose file. So now, if we can, let's look at terminal now. Actually, I still have to run it from the other one. There we go. So got this. Passing a second file to F. So let's go to source. Yeah, so just passing in a second file with -F again, just to that other file. And if we hit that, you can see it's filled in the image again, just like it was before. And we're now, instead of running the image that was in the repository, that has built the image locally, and it's now using that one, but with dependencies which you haven't built locally from your own repositories that have just been built by your normal CI/CD pipelines. So you can have every single one of your projects just put, so you can have one Docker Compose file which defines which applications you have, how they talk to each other, and then a second Compose file that lives with every single application you've got, which tells you how to build the image for that file. And it just splits them out then. And then when you run your Docker Compose, you tell it which you just give it a file which has all of your applications and how they talk to each other. And then the ones that you want to drop in as replacements from your local code, just include the other files now. And it's that, yeah. So it does that. So I promised that you could do this with one click, but we're getting pretty close. So I promise we will get there. But now, even just with that, it's not too much effort just to split those out. And now, okay, I possibly picked a better example of one, but yeah, so we can do the same thing as we did before. We've got that. So we've got our application running from our local code. We can go ahead and attach a Docker debugger to it. Yeah, and you see it's connected, and you can just go through and debug that code now. So that is most of the way there. So now it starts to get a bit more IDE specific, and it'll start looking at what, oh, didn't mean to put that. Yeah, so start looking at how you can set up the VS Code to actually do this. But with those like beginning, with those like basic building blocks, you can just use them with any IDE, because it's most of them you'll be able to do something very similar to this. There's any IDE which you can use to attach to a Docker image, you can just call that one command to start up your application in Docker Compose, and then just whatever you need to do in your IDE to connect to attach to that image, you can do. So because those commands are a little bit long and can be a bit of a pain to type out all the time, in VS Code, you've got a task.json where you can just put the commands that you need to start up your Docker image with your local code in it, but with all of your other dependencies as well. So we can just put that into this tasks.json, and you can run tasks from VS Code. This is the compose up command. Yeah, and that's just done exactly the same as what we were doing before, and starting up our services with that command. It's just a little bit easier. Yeah, you can add another one that'll stop it all again. Once you've done that, so if we can go over to the launch configurations that you've got. And so just a normal launch configuration for attaching a Docker image is quite simple. So we just say that we want to attach, it's a .NET Core app, but with whatever language you're using. And when you run that, it'll comes up with a little pop-up asking which container that you want to connect to. But you can expand that with a few more parameters. So to actually launch it, we can give it a pre-launch task, which references that task before to actually run the command to bring up all of your services. So it will run that. We can then give it the container that we want to attach to, which is in this other compose debug file. Oh, hang on. How do I get rid of this? Hang on, let me make it smaller so I can see it in there. Oh. Ah, yeah.
Left hand one. There you go.
Oh, there's just a bit of a delay. Okay. What was that opening? I know. So yeah, I know it's a bit small now, but yeah, I can't figure out how to get rid of that at this second. So we've got the container name, which is just in this this other Docker compose file that we can use to override it. Oh, it's there, isn't it? That's how you do it. Yeah. Yeah. So we can connect to this container by the name that we set. And yeah, I'm also passing in the debugger as well, but that'll be depending on what language you need. But yeah, that's basically all you need. So now I can just go over to here and I've got a Docker launch. That'll go through the compose file, build the image, start up the Docker compose stack, and attach the debugger, just like you would for any other app, and do whatever you want to do. Click the stop button and it'll take down your services from Docker Compose. And there you go, pretty much with a single click, you can, with the in brackets and a lot of work beforehand. Yeah, you can start debugging. How am I doing for time? Have I got any time to babble on? A minute or two. Okay, right. I'll keep it short then. So obviously, this is quite a simple demo. There's a lot more. Things you need to think about. So one of the problems that we had to overcome when we started looking into doing this at Fluent was the database. So yeah, we've got all the nice new microservices stuff, but we also have a monolithic app with quite a big database behind it as well. And it's the real world. So we do still need to talk to that app as much as we don't want to. Yeah, so actually being able to get a database image that will run locally as well in Docker was a massive piece of work that we had to do before this became useful. And there's other little things like that was quite hard to get over from our UAT environments to being able to run locally. But now, with all of our new services that we're writing, we're going through and doing this process. Then whenever someone new comes in to help someone out to look at a bug or something like that, all we've got to do is pull down the branch, open it in VS Code, click run, and it just does everything you don't need to know about all of its dependencies anymore. And it's just, yeah, made life quite simple. I think that's me done. If anyone's got any questions, thanks for listening.
Yeah. Any questions in the room?
I must have explained it well then. What's that, sorry? Oh, yes, it is. I did forget to mention it is all on GitHub. I can send a link. Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, someone just asked if I've got the code samples anywhere. I've got it all up on GitHub. It's there. I'm sure we can send around a link later, can't we, boss?
If you give it to me, I'll send it round to everyone who's attending on the event, and then you've all got it to go over.
Yeah, so it's there. So you can actually go on that and give it a go, clone it, and just hit F5 in VS Code, and it should work. Fingers crossed. Don't shout if it doesn't.
Any further questions in the room? Or we'll open it out to the chat as well. Any questions? Really has explained it well. Yeah, we're all good. Chat, if anyone's got any questions, now's your time to speak. Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much.
Easy. All right.
Just before we take a break, I want to go over one or two things quickly, but thank you very much once again. So thanks again, Adrian. To do that on 10 days notice is ridiculously good prep. So I can't say how much I appreciate that from you. For the 4 of you who've WhatsApped me since it happened, I will try and see if the bird flying into the window is on the recording and get it played for you. No, I know I mentioned beforehand that the SocialCode has now hit 2,000 members in the Northwest, and I cannot thank everyone enough for that. We have been really fortunate to be able to begin to branch out. Anyone who follows Oscar on LinkedIn may have noticed that the SocialCode has now launched in both Austin, Texas, and Philadelphia. I can't remember what state it's in, but yeah, Austin and Philadelphia both had the SocialCode events. Philadelphia's first event is tonight, actually, but we are looking at what we can do to provide for the community, and this is dev focused. I don't claim that we're anything other than dev focused because I don't know what I'm talking about with anything else. If I'm being totally honest, I don't know what I'm talking about with dev, let's face it. But some people here have actually done events before. You'll notice some flyers around. We've got a testing focused webinar on the 5th of May. If anyone's interested, there's a link and a QR code. Just use your phone, sign yourselves up. If anyone's interested in testing, Cole, if you want to come to the front so the mic can hear you on the stream. I know you're going to hate this. Cole has actually run an event previously for product-based people, but I believe it might be going under a new name now. So if you want to quickly give 2 minutes.
God, this is what I'm going to have to do, isn't it?
Drop me in at the deep end. He didn't know he was doing this until about 5 seconds ago.
Right, so My Way by Frank Sinatra. Yeah, I'm doing an event on the 23rd of June that's aimed at the product community. So similar event, we've rebranded it. It was the Product Social last year, but it's going to sort of stay under the SocialCode banner, but it's SocialCode times product, and it's very much aimed at product managers, product owners, with the whole idea that rather than it be I know there's been a few events around in a similar space, but I think the feedback that I've took from the community so far is that a lot of those events are usually presented by very well-heeled businesses that have got infinite resources to do agile things than by the manifesto. And the feedback that we got was like, we want to sort of explore some of the more human elements. So we did an event last year that was focused around trying to sort of deliver a product roadmap when you've got like a sales team that's selling stuff that you don't even have. And it went down pretty well. So we're doing a similar event in June. It's going to be focused around a few other topics, which will be announced in due course. But got a couple of speakers from people that I've either recruited for or placed before. And we're going to do a little segment around people's journey into the world of product, because it does seem to attract people from industries outside of tech as well. So if you want to pass that on to your product guys and girls, of course. That's the 23rd of June. And hopefully I'll have polished my public speaking skills a bit better by then. Thank you very much.
Right. So just because I know that everyone's going to want to, and for the sake of anyone at the stream, it's 1:45 now. We'll come back at 10:02, raid the beer fridge. I'll send someone down to get more beer from our fridges downstairs. Don't worry, we're not about to run out of beer and gin and anything else. But yes, if we'll come back in 5 minutes, give you a chance to get some fresh air, go to the bathroom, whatever you need. Stream will be back at 10:02 and we'll go from there. Simon's up next. Hi, everyone. If we can just, sorry to be a pain, if I can just get everyone back to their seats, it would make life a lot easier so I can get cracking on with the next talk. But yes, no, thank you very much, everyone. I appreciate that the pizza's here. And thank you very much for everyone. We will have tons left over because it's us. I'm yet to see an event where we've ordered the right amount of pizza. I'm also yet to see an event where we've ordered too little pizza, but we've always ordered about 20 pizzas too many. It's great. So sorry, Steve, that's on your card. There's on Vicky's card, even better. We have got a couple of extra seats, I think, going free now because a couple of people have had to rush off. So if anyone wants to grab those seats, feel free to take them. Right, so I'm going to take the opportunity now to introduce Simon Walton. Simon came up to me at the pub after the last event and really wanted to get involved with speaking. And we talked about a few ideas on the night. And I think this talk was largely born out of what we discussed that evening, if I'm being totally honest. Simon is going to be presenting the talk 12 months as a developer. So Simon's a junior developer at Edited, has got into the industry just over a year ago now, I think is the right time. I don't want to spoil anything for you. I've seen the slides, it looks fantastic. Simon, I'm going to hand over to you now and let you take it from there. You want to come up? So forward, backward.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Hello, everyone. So as Ross said, I'm just going to talk through my 12 months experience from working in a completely different industry, different career, and becoming a developer. And off we go. As I just said, this is the first slide. So I just thought I'd introduce myself a bit and my previous careers, just to give sort of like insight to who I am, and just like also honing on the fact that I came from a completely non-technical background. So I've worked as a coach before, and the reason I've put Jez from Peep Show here is whenever I tell people that I work, very seriously as a coach, they're always like, oh, like Jez from Peep Show, life coaching. I'm like, no, it's way more serious. But I worked for 2 years as a coach, have a background in psychology and positive psychology and coaching psychology, and also worked as an actor. And this is probably like the highlight of my career so far, and a McDonald's advert as a barista. It's the second time round. I got cast the first time, then I wasn't in the final edit. And the second time, they cut all my lines. All I said was, yeah. So that's my claim to fame. But anyway, so I've had like quite a colorful past. But during lockdown, I went freelance with coaching, found it really, really difficult. And I also worked a lot with developers, coaching developers, not from a technical aspect, but I was always really intrigued by their work and working, within tech, and thought, is this something that I could get into, wanting something maybe a bit more stable? And then I did a boot camp during lockdown and decided to change my career. So I wanted, I'm not spend too long on the boot camp. I just thought if anyone is interested at a stage where they thought they might want to do a boot camp, I did one by a company called Le Wagon, and it was full-time, very, very intensive. And this was in London, web development course. If anyone doesn't know what a boot camp is, basically it's like an extremely intensive way to learn computer programming. I won't go too much into the syllabus, but if you just were slightly interested, kind of what was involved, had to do quite a lot of prep work before, which was really, really great. That was all, that didn't cost anything. That was a good test to see if I actually liked coding, and I realized that I was really enjoying it. And then the first few weeks of the core concepts of programming and databases, and then we went on to web development. So actually for the first time saw UI and front end. And this was all in Ruby. And then at this stage we introduced Ruby on Rails. And then we did final projects, which was really good experience to actually work as a group with other developers. And then we did a demo. So that was 9 weeks. And there was an unofficial 10th week, which was Careers Week, which I naively thought there'd be loads of recruiters there. And then, they'll just give us jobs, but it definitely wasn't like that at all. It was just more a case of how, how do you find a job, what to do in technical interviews and things like that. But that was kind of like the beginning of like a scary time. You've like done all this training, and then it's like, oh God, now I need to actually find a job. What do I have to point it to you? I guess I do. I love working in tech, but never knowing how to do computers. I apologize as well. Oh, the Giphies are working. Okay, great. Yeah, so job searching. So all of us on our cohort, it was like, what do we do now? So went through all these things of CV spamming. I'm sure we've all done that before. Sending around CV to as many recruiters and things like that. Contacting recruiters. And again, it's such an overwhelming experience because you're suddenly like, you know, introduced this tech world. I was never part of it before. And having to understand what it all means. So speaking to recruiters and they're saying, we've got this job. They're talking about stack and technology I've never even heard of. Like the imposter syndrome, you know, is like taking over like crazy at this point. And then there was first interviews, again, trying to explain what a boot camp was and experience, but not necessarily feeling like, you know, you've got enough experience. And first coding challenges. And the reason I've got this great Brittany gif is because my worst fear coming out of boot camp was I'd do a paired coding challenge and I would completely blank and would not understand anything. And that's exactly what happened. So I was literally like this the whole time. And on the boot camp, they said, as long as you communicate what you're thinking, so the whole time just going, so what I'm thinking now is I'm not necessarily sure what I'm doing. Yeah, it was terrible. And of course I didn't get the job, but I think it's an important part of, if you are considering going into this, that it isn't just you do a boot camp and then you get a job. However, this is the more positive slide. Whilst I was doing all the job applications, I spent a lot of time on continued learning. And that's so important because when you've done something so intensive, the learning just obviously never stops. You've only just got the first stepping stone of what you can achieve. And I did a bit of freelance. By freelance, I don't want to sound impressive. It was my mum's friend who has a business and my brother-in-law, both pimped out by my mum for me. Tiny bit of money, but it wasn't about that. Because I realized as well, I wanted to go into front end. The bootcamp was full stack and we didn't have much focus on front end. And I knew that React was really important. So I thought, okay, with these websites that they want me to create, why don't I learn React whilst I'm doing it? So this first website, not bane in my life, but I learned so much. It's so simple. It's a static website. There's no routing. All the kind of tabs are just within the same page. However, it was really important that I could actually understand React components. I was lucky I had a senior dev review my code as well. So I was like, it was such a good learning task, as well as, you know, creating something at the same time. And by the time I got into the second one, I felt a bit more confident with it. And again, all this time, whilst I was applying for jobs, I realized this is really, really useful because I'm continued learning, but also I've got something to talk about in interviews. So just some of the things said here as well. On the first website, again, it's you start from the conception, so learning Figma and the designs, even though I didn't want to be a designer, it was important to see it all the way up to deployment. Came into lots of difficulties because I haven't ever used Node packages before. Anyone that understands what yarn and npm are, basically you can't have two at the same time because there's conflicts. I didn't know that. Deleted Node modules about 20 times, ran into lots of problems. However, I thought all these learnings, I can put it in a blog. So I wrote a couple of blogs about how to create your first React website. And again, what was really, really useful was when I have had interviews, they all picked up on the fact that they're impressed that there was blogs that I'd written, and they really were interested to see the websites that I created myself for my portfolio. So I really, really encourage this as a task as well. All the meanwhile that if you're looking for jobs, once you finish the bootcamp or if you just graduated. So then it was on to landing first roles. So I was really lucky after maybe about 2 months whilst I was, building these websites, continued learning. I got a front end developer job at a design agency called Four Leaf. And it was a temp contract. Long story short, I came second place, I guess. They hired someone else, but the managing director said, could I actually come back and work for them over the busy Christmas period for 4 months, which I did. And yeah, it was an amazing experience because I learned, I didn't even know what a design agency meant or working for an agency, how that would be different from a software house. So it's lots of quick turnarounds, lots of quick deadlines, and lots of different code bases. But also as well from a front end perspective, I was basically in just HTML and CSS, which obviously, you know, the fundamentals front end is important, but I was desperate to kind of get my teeth into some more JavaScript and React. And then I got a job at Edited. And just to explain as well, I actually was coaching at Edited. So yes, there might have been part of me being able to get a job there because I knew people, but I still had to obviously go through all the same hiring process and doing, you know, tech challenges and everything like that. But they're a software house. They work with data and retail analytics. And I'm going to go on to tell you a bit what like front end is like at Edited. So again, yeah, this Giphy is great if anyone's seen it. Compared to what I had at the agency, which was very much like HTML, CSS. Again, if anyone's wanted to know more about front end, I've heard there's almost like two sides to it. There's like the UI side, which is, you know, the HTML, CSS. There's almost like the back end of the front end. And this is very much feels like the back end of the front end, which I really like. So we code in React. Also, there's a lot of data management on the front end using Redux, which I'd never seen before. And this image here is kind of just demonstrate as well. It's what I didn't necessarily know that what becoming a software engineer would involve, but it's great and I really love. So this is an image of a button being pressed, and there are so many endpoints as well involved within the architecture of Redux. I had to plan it. So, you know, certain times I can just be planning how we want the Redux architecture to be. However, there is every now and then a tiny bit of CSS, and it's exactly like this Giphy shows. I'm trying to breathe through it and respect it because it's a powerful tool. But yeah, so this is kind of what front end like feels like for me and looks like for me at Edited. And I've been really lucky as well. At the beginning of the year, I was able to lead on a project, which was very lucky and obviously a lot of trust in me. We also hired a new junior front-end engineer and I mentored him. And of course, it's like the classic thing as well. You learn most from when you teach. So realizing how much I'd learned from onboarding him and, you know, learning how to like prepare tickets for someone, and also learning, working with the product managers, how to, you know, have technical discussions about what the front end needs. But I kind of put this Giphy because it made it seem like I was like Elle Woods of like, of course I can lead a front end, you know, I've only been working here for 6 months. Oh my God, it really was hard. So on the surface, it might have seemed like that, but it was really hard. But like anything, like you learn from sometimes being thrown in the deep end and taking on responsibility. So yeah, I've been fortunate as well that the Edited is sort of company that allows that and has trust in juniors as well, and doesn't necessarily see you as just a label. Because I think sometimes if you're entry level, you're junior from a boot camp, you kind of can't get rid of that brand for a while. They see you in a certain way. So I just wanted to touch on as well some tips. I don't know if many people in here or on Zoom are considering going into this or are a junior themselves. So I thought it might be useful to share some tips just from my experience. And also I thought it might be interesting for seniors and leads to have an insight what it is like to be an entry-level junior. So some of them might seem obvious, but obviously keep learning and building. As I said, where I grew the most was when I did those freelance projects. I said, even if you're not being paid, just continue learning, because employers will always be impressed by what you keep building and teaching yourself. It sounds obvious as well, but stay positive in applications. And I guess I could talk about the other point that I thought about, but I didn't write on here and try not to play the victim, which is, again, really difficult. So me and my friends in the boot camp, we were like, oh, this is so difficult. Like everyone says it's so easy to get jobs in tech. There's so much demand from it. But whenever we check, they just want senior, or mid-level, or the junior says, we want juniors, minimum 4 years experience. I'm like, that's not a junior. So we had a lot of frustration, but I had a turning point when I actually just accepted. I was like, I can accept how it is. Like if you are a smaller company, you probably will want the senior to come in, because having an entry-level junior that's an investment. You've got to have a lot of time in them, hoping you'll get some reward and some impact from them. I accept that. And, if the recruiter's calling you and they think you're mid-level and you're not, and that's all they've got, that's okay. So it may sound obvious, but I think when you kind of like accept it is harder for an entry-level junior, but that doesn't mean you have to give up. You just have to maybe be a bit creative and put that into action and think, what can I do? Avoid comparing yourself to others. So either from a boot camp or other friends, who are in a similar position, or other people that you've graduated with. It's so difficult not to compare, but if other people get jobs before you, which they may do, it happened for me, just try and congratulate them because they make you feel better. I think it's really important as well. Now I've been on the other side where I've been interviewing. We're interviewing for new juniors, and it really does make a difference if they are really enthusiastic and eager to learn. Because as my manager says, they're like something, for us edited, if they've never seen Redux like I hadn't, they're like, we don't care. As long as you've got like a good, basic understanding of code, it's your attitude, it's your willing to learn. When you take on an entry-level junior, they want to be able to mold you into a really good engineer. So with that comes, wanting you to be a sponge with a good attitude. So I think what you can offer is an eagerness to learn, because that's what, if you can't make up for his experience that you don't have, right? Enjoy the process. Again, a turning point for me was like, I could just turn this into a whole doom and gloom, because it is serious, because, I need to find a job, I need money, but you are allowed to enjoy it. No one says you have to take it really, really seriously. You can see like some of my coaching background has come into some of these tips. And you're allowed to reject too. Like, again, like initially when I was CV spamming, like I said before, and I was like, yeah, like my friend said, she was like, where's Preston? I was like, yeah, she's like, I live in Preston, for 10K. And we were like, hang on, this is ridiculous. We can't take any job that anyone's prepared to give us. We have to like push back a bit. And it felt really good as well when I was on a call with the CEO. He reached out to me. He didn't ask me a single question. I didn't think he'd even seen my CV. And I thought afterwards, actually, I don't want to pursue this, even though I had no reason to, because I had no other leads or anything. But it felt good to remember that, I don't have to accept everything just because essentially I'm desperate, because I'm going to have to work in that job and then I'll be miserable in it, right? So I think, yeah, that's an important thing to remember. And maybe some tips, or maybe some insight for seniors and leads. Yeah, this Giphy is sometimes how we feel, at least how I felt, quite needy and vulnerable and just want, to be looked after. But I think as well, if you're being really transparent, you think, right, okay, we're hiring, we do want an entry level, we do want a junior. Make your interview process encouraging for that, because I know, even if you're senior, you're going to be nervous in interviews and coding challenges. But if you really want to get the best out of an entry-level junior, and as long as they've got a basic understanding, of code, make it as encouraging and fun as possible, so they feel comfortable and you get the best out of them. Provide support specifically for juniors. So when I spoke to recruiters, they would always ask me, what are you looking for? What's important to you? And the one thing I would say is, has this company worked with juniors before? Do they know how to support them? Because for me, again, knowing other people who have got their first jobs working remotely since COVID, they were left by themselves. So I had a friend, she was completely left by herself. She was even thinking of paying for a mentor herself to try and like help her, because she was just left alone. And it was really isolating. And I thought, that's definitely not what I want. I want a company that knows how to basically look after someone who's junior and how to show them what to do. And kind of like leading on, similar to point, but again, Ed, I was really, really grateful that the leads and seniors and managers, or even, peers, made time for pair programming, because that's when I learned the most. It'd be sharing my screen, me driving it, but having that and making time for it, never underestimate like how much, I guess anyone new, but especially entry-level junior, will gain from that. And it really helped me when one of my colleagues said that when he did a boot camp, and when he started, he felt so overwhelmed just by the size of the code base, because when you haven't worked in a big code base, all you've ever seen is what you've created from scratch yourself. So it's obviously really small. And even from a front end perspective, you know, I've seen this massive code base, you know, working with one component, trying to trace the props of the data coming through, literally having to go through like 10 different files to find, you know, the one bit of information that I needed. And it's overwhelming, but just him saying to me that like, oh, when I first started, the size of the code base and everything overwhelmed me, that just made me feel better, because when I felt overwhelmed, I'm like, that's normal. But again, if you haven't necessarily got a team or where people are saying that to reassure people that, you know, that is how you might feel. Again, it's really, really small things, but maybe someone who's new might not actually communicate they're feeling overwhelmed. So if you can preempt that, it's really powerful. And encourage merging code as soon as possible. So on my first week, it's not impressive at all. It's literally a loading spinner that just need to be moved from here to the center of the page. So a tiny bit of fun CSS, but it felt so motivating for me as well to actually be like, you know, go through all the process of creating a pull request, getting code reviews, and actually merging it live into what, in my mind, this is enormous, massive, important software. Got customers all around the world. They're using it, you know, 24/7. And my, you know, little change, but that was really, really motivating. And now obviously don't care, break the app, whatever. Just like standard, like devs do. But I think that's a really good tip as well, rather than, again, thinking maybe, oh, you know, they're not ready, they can't do these things, because hopefully we can. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, are there any questions? What was the question, sorry? Oh, fun. The question was, what was fun CSS? I think the reason it was fun because I could actually do it and it was really simple. I didn't have to Google anything.
Anything else? I'll let you take it away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pointing at you, so.
All right. Thanks a lot. That was very motivational indeed, especially, well, 10,000 components and getting props across them in React, very relatable.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about the application process. Say there's a recruiter and he looks at the application, and then they decide, like, yes, I want to interview that person. Like, where is the line there? Where is the threshold, so to say, after which, like, what impresses a recruiter in an application? Is it like, do they need to prove how enthusiastic they are in the cover letter, or is it kind of bullet points of the skills they have in the actual CV? What is it?
Yeah. So the question was, what impresses recruiters in your application?
Recruiters at the application stage.
Application. Ross, you might be able to answer well for this. I quickly say from my perspective, I said being on the other end of it. Of course, there will always be the keywords for languages. So the minute, if that, you know, a CV hasn't got React on it, if, you know, because there are so many applications, the minute it's got React on it, you can delve in deeper. And personal projects as well. If you haven't got, you know, a long work history, is really important because there's something, you know, you go on the GitHub. So having as much that we can see as possible, and not having to kind of go off on Google too much.
Yeah, I'll just step into the mic for the sake of it. I think the first thing is, don't worry about impressing the recruiter. Be yourself. That's the most important thing in the world. We would far rather see a CV that reflects who you are as a person. But the piece of advice that I find myself giving out the most, because I can't speak for any person who's ever hired for a job ever, but something that I do on it, I will read every CV. The thing that I would look for is, it's not what technology did you use and what did the application do, it's what did you do for that application? How did you make contributions to a repo? How did you, you know, what code did you have merged? How was that focused? You don't need to have done 1,000,001 things, especially for people who are on probably the more junior end. Nobody's looking for you to have, I'll put it this way, any company that's 4 years experience for a junior has lost their head. I'll throw it out there now. But if you can explain how you contribute to a project rather than what the project did, that's going to be far easier for me to understand in advance of a call with you. That being said, I would never not make the call. I just think that's the thing that on paper would make someone stand out beforehand.
Yeah.
There's someone at the other end of it as well.
Sorry, I hate to be a pain in. There's a stream here. Any chance you can speak in the mic?
Coming up.
As someone that's at the other end of it as well, I'd say that what Ross has said, be honest and don't try and hide what you've not done in your CV and kind of judge yourself up to look like something that's more than you are, because we'll tend to spot it in an interview. Whereas if you're honest and you come into the interview and you say what you don't know, I'm much more likely to like you and be willing to put the time into helping you become a better professional than I would be if I interview you and I work out that you've not said the truth in your CV. It's like, be honest, be upfront. Don't go into an interview and go, yeah, I've done that, but you haven't, because we will find out. So that's pretty much it.
That being said, being honest about that as well, it allows people to create a training package for you. It allows people to say, right, well, you've not done this, but we like the fact that you've got a good personality, a strong work ethic, and you clearly pick things up easily. If you can utilize that, they will create something for you. The first 6 months of your job are going to be way easier than if they think that you've done a lot more. I think that would be it.
Yeah. I've got 2 juniors that are working with me at the moment that have both come out of coding camps, and I've got them through kind of doing CRUD's REST interfaces, backends, and now I'm going through teaching them unit testing. And I can see that they think as a developer, because I'm teaching them basics of unit testing, and they're coming back and asking me questions that are really sensible questions of, I've realized I've written the same code twice. Can I just use the same method to test these 2 bits of code? I'm like, that is the right question to ask, because I've not told the person that. I was basically planning on getting through code review and then going, okay, there's a better way that we could do this, but he's asked me the question up front. And kind of, if you've got a question, just ask, because you're usually in the right place. Cheers.
Sorry, didn't mean to take that away from you.
No, that's good, thank you. And just quickly last to say as well, remember recruiters are human, because I think it's easy to think they're not human, but they are. So pick up the phone and call. Yeah. Oh, great questions. The question was, if I had my time again, would I do anything differently? Again, it's that classic thing of just trying not to stress out, because it was such a overwhelming, stressful time in terms of the job application. I think if I were to do it differently, yeah, I think it's kind of what I said on the slide, just try and enjoy it, because it was actually a really fun time, all that learning, like first learning React, whereas I was just in such a stress mindset. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So the question was, have other people on the bootcamp I was with, do they get jobs? Some have and some haven't. I think it's good to be transparent as well, because I think what I quite liked about my bootcamps, they didn't say guaranteed job at the end of it, because it is a hard industry as, again, entry-level junior. So not everyone did. I don't know percentage, I'm afraid. No, I don't know. But I just know some who have, some who haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Really enjoyed the talk and found it very interesting. It's also an awesome journey you've done. I find it interesting. I've been like a digital nomad the last 2 years, so I've talked to a lot of people who've done life coaching from the boot camp themselves to various probably levels of education and stuff in other industries. So I find that interesting. I've kind of had my questions solved already. I guess, like, if you could go back, would you do like the traditional route? How would you compare against that? So doing a 3-4 year uni course and going it that way, so like other careers influence how you think about stuff today?
Yeah. So the question was, would I do anything differently in terms of the route I got into it? I don't think so. And I think because I already had a degree, already had a master's, so we got to the point where I was like, I'm done with like, you know, degrees. I want something, not something quick, but something practical. And I think boot camp's good for that. I've actually worked with someone who, well, actually 2 people, they didn't even do a boot camp. They were self-taught. So part of me kind of feels like, oh, that's even more impressive. Could I have done that? But I think I needed the regiment behind it. But I recommend it. Are we okay for time?
Yeah,
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah. So. So are you saying, have I got like areas that I've been missing if I were to do a computer science degree? Yes. No, that's a really important, good question. Yeah, so it's from doing a boot camp, have I found gaps in my knowledge compared to if I'd done a computer science degree? And I think it's one of those blissful things of like, for a while, well, still maybe now, I don't know what I don't know. So I haven't found, I'm sure there are, everything I get taught, I just, you know, I'm still like a sponge. So I just take everything on. I don't see it as like, well, if I did a computer science degree, I would have already known that, if that makes sense. So I think I'm kind of this blissful ignorance of just accept everything, and not accept everything, but try and learn everything. But I didn't have an idea of what I should know, say, compared to other people.
So, sorry to be time. We maybe take 2 or 3 more from the room because we've got a bunch from the chat as well that we need to go through. I'll let you pick who you want to speak to.
Can you do it?
Has anyone not asked a question that would like a chance to first? At the back there, sorry.
Yes. Well done.
Someone going into the production, this previous model what would be your advice to me? Is it to go for a full stack or to go for front end?
That's a good question. Yeah, so the question was, recently finished boot camp, applying for jobs. Is it just, are you saying, do you feel like you need to pick a stack, pick a niche? Yeah. And what would I advise? I think it depends on what your interests are. I said, like, the powerful thing by just keep learning and keep building, I think you might get a sense of what you enjoy more. For me, I don't know why, just front end just instantly felt, apart from the CSS stuff, I just felt like I liked the feedback, but who knows, because I was also at the time applying for back end jobs. I think keep your mind open. But if there's an area that specifically that you enjoy, for me as well, I like that, because there's so many technologies, you know, there's so much to learn. For me, it felt like I just wanted to narrow it in, literally like Redux and React, that I feel like I want to specialize. But other people, you know, because how they learn, they want to know everything, lots of different languages. So I think initially maybe just apply for everything. And then even if you do tech challenges, and if there's a back-end challenge and you're doing more back-end ones and you're finding you're not enjoying them as much as maybe the front-end ones, just keep focusing on what you want and what you enjoy learning, and don't get like dictated by what the jobs say, if that makes sense.
Take one more from the back there.
I know.
My question was, you said it's okay to turn down jobs. What sort of red flags you would look out for with any sort of job when you're interviewing with a company?
Yeah, so the question was, what red flags are there from companies to say no? I said for me, like, because just as we were saying before, I was always really transparent. I wanted, you know, any recruiter, any company I was working with to know that I came from a boot camp. There's no like hiding anything, you know. I just wanted them to know that, because I didn't want to get stuck in a job whereby the expectations were too high or I was sinking. So I think red flags, again, when I'd ask the question, have you had juniors or entry-level people from a boot camp before? And if they don't say yes, basically, or they're like, oh, maybe, or they're not really sure, if it's a recruiter, then I think that personally was a red flag, because I wanted to ensure that I had that support. And again, like my experience before, if you have people that contact you and it all sounds great, but it just maybe because they're just growing really quickly and they're not necessarily interested in you, like that experience I had, no interest in asking me any questions on my CV. Who knows, that could have been a really, really good job. And maybe I'm being too self-involved, being like, you have to ask me things too. But I think just kind of like, I think the important point is you're going to have to be working in that. If you do get that job, potentially, for a year, 2 years, yes, you might be desperate, but just think about your own personal values. And if that doesn't match it, it's okay to say no, because you're going to have to be working in that job all the time.
So we've got 4 questions to blitz through from here.
Okay.
Short time.
Go.
Steve asked, how do you work out how best to mentor a junior? How do you work out how best that they learn? And what have you learned about the different ways of teaching?
Oh, good question. So I basically, with the junior that I've been mentoring, I taught him how I was taught. And again, it's always making sure, sounds really simple, but always making sure that he was driving it. So sharing his screen and talking through, again, allowing for that space to, because it's so overwhelming and nerve-wracking. Even now, when I share my screen with another developer, you code terribly, your spelling goes out the way, your syntax goes, you make stupid mistakes. So just like allowing for that, but also allowing for them to ask you questions, giving them space as well, maybe ask open questions, right, rather than trying to give the answer. And I think as well, being really honest as well. I think the junior that I mentored, he really loved it when I said, I don't know either, let's work it out together. And I had that for me with a senior person being like, I don't know, let's work it out together. And it instantly felt like, oh, this is fun, we're working it out together, rather than being like, I'm being tested. So yeah.
So they'll ask, what in your previous career helped you in your new role?
Well, acting, I don't think has helped. Maybe it has. But no, all jokes aside, I think, especially with leading a project for the front end, I think, yeah, my coaching skills and people skills and organizational skills has definitely helped. I'm junior, but not junior necessarily in terms of age and experience. I think what a lot of companies like, especially with bootcamp people that have transitioned from another career, you've got so many like other skills, like soft skills, that would be really, really useful. So I think probably, yeah, the people coaching stuff.
Brilliant. Paddy asked, is it better to have projects live, or is it okay to just push your code up to GitHub?
Oh, I guess I kind of want to get everyone's answer. I don't know. It almost doesn't matter. I think as long as you've got something to show and something you can talk through and something you can send, maybe like having something live is more useful. But again, it depends, because if a recruiter is looking and they're not as technical, they might want to see a live website, for example. But I think either.
I would say from that perspective, as a recruiter, we don't mind either way.
Recruiters don't mind. There you go.
And the last one, Linda asked, how do you feel that your bootcamp has equipped you to start a developer role?
I think it's just all obviously it taught me the fundamentals, but also just gave me the confidence of, maybe if I had self-taught, I would never feel like I'm ready to get a job, because I probably wouldn't have felt like, the imposter syndrome was there. I didn't really know what I was doing, but because actually going through this process and the training, that gave me the confidence to say, well, other people have done this from a boot camp, I now can do it. So I think it definitely just gave me the confidence and the coding foundations.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. So we're going to take a 10-minute break now. Get your beer, get the rest of the pizza. Please get rid of it. It saves us so much effort. And then we'll get last talk on. thank you very much once again to everyone who has attended this evening. For those of you who've not been here before, this is the point of the night where we do get to quickly give out a couple of prizes for attending. For those on the stream, I promise for next time, I'm going to have something sorted out to give to you as well. If you would like to check the back of your chair, if you have, is it a dot sticker on the back, the yellow dot? If you've got a Post-it note on the back of your chair, you've won a wireless charger. There should be 3. Where are they? Have we got any prize winners? We've got 1 there. We've got 2 there. Guys, come and collect your prizes. You've won a prize. You've got a wireless charger. Both of you got wireless chargers. And you got 3rd there. That's all 3. I'll pass these out. 1. 2. Thank you very much. 3. Right, I'm going to quickly introduce our last speaker of the evening because I am conscious that we're running a bit tight on time. I know a bunch of you want to get to the pub. I have texted Oscar's marketing manager and asked what our budget is for pints for the night, and he did tell me to F off. So, no, we do have a little bit of money, though. We are going to put a couple of rounds behind the bar for everyone. So if you would like to join us afterwards, we're going to be going to the Ralph Abercrombie, which is just over the road behind Brewdog. I'm going to quickly introduce now Stuart Bradley, another person who came up to me after the last event and said they would like to do a talk. Really excited by this concept because it takes everything that you would think is a buzzword and trendy and goes the opposite and really digs deep as to what is actually worth it. Quickly, if anyone would like to speak at future events, I'm always open. Grab me in the pub afterwards. But Stuart, I can't wait to see this. Get yourself away, mate.
Hello, everyone. So, make monoliths. There is a joke on this, by the way, which you'll see at the end. So, modular monoliths. How did I get here? So I started programming about 5 years ago, and self-taught. I got very lucky, kind of innate of working as admin. There was a few contractors. They were like, "Oh, you're into IT. Go down there with the developers." I had no idea what I was doing, and one of the developers there was teaching me design patterns before I even knew Java. No idea what was going on. So unfortunately, the budget ran out in a few months. I went home. I had a taste for it. I had to go back to admin. So I basically spent my years on employer site, YouTube, taught myself C#. I realized in Blackpool, there's no Java jobs. They're all C#. So I applied for my first job. I applied for many jobs, got knocked back, finally got one. A company in Blackpool, a little energy company. And I joined them, and there were 3 developers, including myself. We were all junior developers. And then there was a kind of guy who was a manager, who knew how to program, should I say. He knew the basics of C#, but there was no kind of major knowledge there. So the developers, there was quite a quick turnaround there. And basically, we didn't know what we were doing. We were working on an energy kind of piece of software. It was dreadful, basically, and I hated my life. Well, I kind of enjoyed it at the start. I enjoyed it at the start because it was a case of, oh my God, I'm a programmer. This is amazing. And then I remember in about a year's time, I was working, it was on WinForm, by the way. Yeah. And I changed the form and it broke something on the other side of the application. And I was like, oh, that shouldn't happen. That's not normal. And everyone's like, oh no, it's normal. It's fine. Like the system's really bad. So after that incident, I left. I went and joined another company. COVID hit, unfortunately. And I found it really difficult jumping to a new company. I'm working from home. There was a big jump in knowledge. And I was a bit like, okay. So my boss from my first job started a company and went, come and work for me. So I was like, okay, no problem. And this is where this kind of monolith kind of happened, because I had a really bad experience with a monolith. And I was like, no, there's got to be better ways. You can't just go, oh, this is really badly built. Let's just jump to microservices, because, well, microservices are very complex. So I was like, okay, there's got to be a middle ground here. So this is kind of what this is about. So we all kind of have this. You look at a monolith, very simple kind of system. Let's get some data from the database and present it. So the first thing we have is our presentation, basically. We have the business logic. Let's go get something back from the business logic and then display that. So the business logic, let's get something from the database, display that. Important data. And then we're like, oh, change the name of the employee. So, okay, I'm going to basically go to my business logic. I'm going to do something. I'm going to change the name, basically. Okay. Now, human resources want to add salary, national insurance, holiday allowance. So now we've got a department kind of involved saying, oh, I want to add all these different things. So, okay, no problem. Create a model. Everything's public, everything's good, cool. Let's do what we want with that. Now, sales want to get involved. Oh, we want to start tracking stuff. Okay, no problem. We'll add all that kind of stuff. No problem. So now we have an employee now with a list of calls. That's again public. And then we have calls on there. Problem was this. Why do we just make everything public? We're just told, oh, it's fine. Well, you kind of get taught there's encapsulation and you get taught like, oh, there's different kind of keywords there to use, private, whatever. And then as soon as you go into a job, everything's public. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I can do whatever how I want with this. It doesn't really help. Then objects are used for multiple purposes. So now I've got an object that's now used by like 3 different departments. They can all change it however they like. And what if 2 departments want to change the same thing? That comes very complex. So the big thing for me, and this took me a very long time to realize, I'm not helping the next developer. So I always thought, like, if I'm the only developer working on something, encapsulation is actually not that important. I know everything in my head, everything's fine. I can change things because I know it. But as soon as we go away from that and we've got another person, I had this problem where another developer went on holiday and someone went, oh, can you go have a look at this for me? And I broke it. I didn't know how to use it. I could change anything on that model. And well, I did, and I broke it. So didn't help at all. Now, I'm not going to say this word because I have a list. So I'm going to say big ball of mud. I cannot say that word. So we'll just move on from there. The benefits to this approach, like quick and fast. Yeah, get something out the door. Everything's good. Again, if you're working on this by yourself, I encourage this kind of thing. But this is very horizontal. We've basically created something. We've got 3 kind of layers, typical 3-tier architecture, really. So where did I go next? So I had really bad experience with this simple 3-tier architecture. Where did I go? And I found this book. I read this book for a very long time. I read it about 3 times. And I loved it. It kind of, all the things that I learned online, it kind of reiterated it. Now, it's a very old book. Some of the things are a bit outdated, but I encourage everyone to try and to have a quick read of this. So what does it teach? Encapsulation, again, I now make things private until I need to make them public. That's the best way of doing things. You shouldn't just make it public because it's easier. Right? Onion architecture, I'll hit on that a little bit more. That's another way of looking at how a system should be built, taking away the 3-tier kind of stuff. Bounded context, this removes that problem I had before where now I have a model being used for 2 different purposes. That shouldn't happen. Aggregates, can't say that word either. We'll hit on that a little bit more, but that's the idea that you should have one entry point to your system and that's it. Let's just stay there. Don't start messing with loads of different things. It's not worth it. CQRS, command query, responsibility, segregation, can't say that word either, and events, which we'll hit on a little bit more, but they're the kind of key components. Now, when it comes to a modular monolith, we don't need to include all of these, but it was a point of where I started to look, actually there's more to this. So, onion architecture. Originally, the 3-tier architecture would put this as the most important thing. Everyone's bothered about the database. Let's care about our data. But actually, when you have a big enough system, your domain's the most important thing. Your database, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you use SQL Server, Mongo, it doesn't matter. Let's get our domain right. The database will kind of go on from that. We've got, so the presentation, API, whatever you want to use, it's a front end of some sort. Your application, this is kind of where all your use cases are. So in the CQRS pattern, this is where all your commands and queries kind of go. That's it acts upon your domain. It does a job on your domain. And then your domain is your domain objects. How I actually see this is, so your API contacts your application. I want to do something. Your application contacts your domain. So this is, if we look at this, this is kind of references as well. So your application has a reference to your, your API has a reference to your application. Your application has a reference to your domain. Your persistence infrastructure needs to know about your domain, because if you're using something like Entity Framework, it needs to know about your models. And then we've got this two-way kind of thing going on here. Now, this took me a very long time to work out, because you can't do this in C#. It'll just complain at you. So what you do is you put an interface in your application layer, and you have your hard kind of coded stuff in your persistence. Also means that your application can't use your context directly. We're letting it use it how an interface we want to use it. We're not giving it access to everything. That's really important later on when we start looking at kind of the modular stuff, because there's different levels to how you can do a modular kind of monolith. You can have a very simple approach to it, and then as you need to, make it more complicated. So, like I said before, your presentation to your API and UI, use cases, get something on the database, run domain logic. Your application, if you start seeing domain logic in your application, remove it. Shouldn't be there. It should all be in your domain. Your application really is doing one job, and that's kind of using the interface from your persistence layer to get something back, and then save to changes afterwards. When I'm writing commands, that's literally the thing that I do. So I have the context, I do get something, do something on that thing, save it. That's all it should really do. And yeah, so I use the CQRS pattern for that, which is Mediator. And yeah, it uses the database using the dependency inversion principle, which is from Solid, if anyone's heard from that. Domain, really important. This is pure C# information. That is it, like data, sorry, code, that's the word. It shouldn't have any external dependencies on it whatsoever. It should be just pure logic. So, database communication. Now, I absolutely love Entity Framework. I think what they've done going forward, allowing, it's like they read that DDD book and went, how can we make this better? Because a while ago, you couldn't make things private. Now you can. You can get away with that. And Entity Framework will help you with that. Login logic will go in there as well. Communication with file systems, emails, SMS, all these things kind of go into your infrastructure layer, and to be FIDO as well. So onto the actual monolith. Each context will have its own module. So what we could do quite easily is put all this into one project, and that's fine. If I was working on that, I know I wouldn't follow the rules, because someone will say to me, oh, can you change this? And I'll be like, yeah, I quit. And they're like, oh, you got an hour to do it. I'm going to ignore every rule on the planet. I'm just going to do whatever I want. So you separate everything into its own kind of project. So let's imagine we've got shipping, sales, and accounting. They all might have similar objects in regards to maybe a person, an employee, but they're different things. They're using them for different things. So when we look at a simple monolith, this is what we normally get. We've got the presentation, we've got the business logic, we've got the data access. Nice and simple. When we look at the modular model, it becomes a bit more complicated very quickly. Each context has its own kind of slice of what's going on. So we're removing this kind of horizontal. We still kind of have that, but actually what we've also done is slice it down as well. So we're kind of going vertical there as well. And it also means things aren't going to interact with each other by accident. Like I said, what I'm doing here is now helping the next developer look at that and go, oh, I know what to do here. They can't do something I don't want them to do. So when you look at microservices, one of the key things there is I've got a small team working on a module. They know about that. They can't interact with mine. That's all good. I can do the exact same thing here. I just say to the developers, don't touch that as a module. If you need something, come and speak to me. I know most about that. So it kind of removes that thing. And if someone's using my domain, I've written the domain, I'm kind of telling them how to use it by following encapsulation, really. So that for me was really, really important, because from being on a team of junior developers, cutting corners was a big thing. We didn't care. We were just getting things out the door, nice and easy. So I'm now helping that next developer look at that and go, actually, I know how to use this object. So we have this kind of this structure now. Instead of having kind of everything all in one big thing, we separate everything out into neat little compartments. And we can even, at this point, it's complete. When I'm saying about different levels, this is showing different storage. We could just use the same database if we wanted to. We can use schemas to separate that thing out, and frameworks again, really good with that. However, one of the benefits of microservices is that we can use different technologies. As long as we use an interface, it doesn't really matter what technology the storage is in. It's in different modules. So we can kind of like separate that out a little bit. And then we've got an in-memory event bus. Because it's not a microservices, everything's constantly running, everything can be done in memory. Is it quite quick? So how do modules talk to each other? I looked at this concept, this modular concept for about 18 months. This took me a year. It was really I couldn't find an answer to this online for a very long time. But basically, when I was querying stuff, I don't want to be querying stuff across databases in my application because I'm kind of like defeating the whole object of this. I'm basically just cutting across. So I was like, how do I actually do this? And I finally found the answer. Well, just let the UI do it. If we're using GUIDs, there is a very, very small percentage. And if anyone's done that, by the way, have you got a GUID collision? Anyone? No, never going to happen. If it does, let me know because it would be amazing. But we can just use the GUIDs in the other database. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a foreign key. It's pretty much unique anyway. So if we provide an ID across boundaries, it's not the end of the world. So we'll just let the UI go and do another call with that ID. No problem whatsoever. When you want to talk across boundaries with your command, so you want to do something, so in regards of maybe a new employee has been added, and then you want to add that across the boundaries, we'll just do an event. We're removing that link directly between two kind of boundaries there. If you remove one side of it, it's not going to break. We're okay. So we end up with something like this. So the admin module will have an events on it. The commands will have a reference to that and it can see them. So it can then basically subscribe to those and the same the other way around. So entry point. You saw on that kind of diagram before, we got an API thing at the top. Dependency injection because the API has access to every single project, it can then basically do the dependency injection for each area as well. What I've done, just to clean it up a little bit, is put something in each module that deals with its own dependency injection and then call that from your API project, really. So yeah, it should reference each application layer and each infrastructure. The reason it has to access the application, if you're using CQRS, it needs to know about your queries and your commands, and then your infrastructure for setting up entity framework for your dependency injection on that. And the controller pretty much just do one job, get something, send it to the right module, everything's done, cool. So levels. So one of the things microservices has is this ability to scale. You look at a monolith, and normally the ability to scale is to throw more resources at the whole thing. It'll work. So you've got the option in process entity framework. So you can override something like the save changes. So on that kind of process of saving them as a database, override it, and then fire off your events all in one go. So when you do your save changes, it does everything at the same time. Cool. If you want to go outside of process, I'll give you an example here. There are loads of different examples. Well, you can use something like hangfire, send commands to hangfire, and now you kind of got this fire and forget thing going on. So someone can send something off. If it's a big job, send it off to hangfire, and it'll do it out of process. So the person will get a response back saying, yeah, that's kind of been sent off. Everything's cool. So you're saving time a little bit there. And then obviously I mentioned this before, one or many databases. So this for me was a big thing. Don't need to write every module in the same way. So I'm a big fan of DDD, big fan of encapsulation, all that kind of stuff. But actually, it doesn't suit every module. You're going to have modules which are really crud. They're just, you're updating some data. There's no logic there. Well, write that module in that way. It doesn't matter. It's fine. So, like I said before, I'm a big fan of entity framework. We can have private properties. The only thing that needs to be done is that you need a constructor in there to be private. That's it. Entity framework will do everything for you from that point. That was a big thing for me because I always kind of understood that databases needed things to be public. But when you could do this, they kind of just like, oh, I can make everything private again. Cool, good job. Mentioned this, so override your things. So the benefits. So looking at this, I'm now going to try and kind of compare what this modular monolith brings to the table compared to what Microservices do. So easy to work on, small applications. Each team can work on a service, can pick a technology for each service, scale independently. So what's the benefits now of writing a monolith in this way? Well, module, we can work on each one. Each team can work on a module. Limited, fair enough, if I'm writing my program in C#, I have to write the whole thing in C#, but we can then start separating things like your like database technologies away a little bit, hide things behind interfaces, and we can try and limit things, kind of separate things a little bit in that respect. But unfortunately, yeah, the whole thing has to be written in the same language. Faster development. For me, writing one of those kind of messy monoliths, at first it was really quick. And then you get a few months into it and things start slowing down a little bit. And you start kind of, like I said, hating your job and wondering why you became a developer. So doing it this way, there is a little bit of kind of thing at the start where you have to set all the projects, fair enough. But then as you kind of get into it, it is a lot quicker to change stuff because there's not much code. I've worked on service like a service class that has something like 600 lines on it. And yeah, I hated every moment of it. So, and we always get taught this as well. So high cohesion, low coupling. So when you look at a monolith in itself, you can do this like a simple monolith 3-tier. You can do this, but you have to have a lot of self-control. Doing it this way, that happens naturally. There's no way to break that really. So yeah, any questions?
Oh, sorry, one last thing, sorry.
Oh, the £20 joke.
For anyone on the stream who can't see that, his hat says "Make monoliths great again."
I was wearing this on the way down, and my fiance later said to me, "It was like people driving past us thinking you're a Trump supporter," and I was like, I instantly just went, "Nope."
Any questions from the room?
Yeah, earlier you were talking about layers.
Yes.
Logic. So I'm pretty sure from a Java point of view, so apologies.
Okay, I'll try and answer your question as good as I can.
So you may have a perspective from your API or
Yeah.
UI of what a employee looks like, for example.
Yeah.
And your relational database.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the same picture.
Okay.
Necessarily, or maybe.
So it should in this respect, yeah. So the idea is that if you're firing off an API call from your client, I'll repeat the question. So it's basically to do with, does your API have the same kind of view as your business logic, kind of what's going on there? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So actually your API should know nothing about your domain. So your API, it's got one job, and that's to fire off a command. So in respect of add a new employee or change salary, for example, the API should just send off a command that says change the salary or whatever with some details in there for that employee. It's your application that knows about your domain. Your API itself should have no knowledge of that. That's a great sneeze, by the way. You just did that. It shouldn't know anything about your domain, really. It's that kind of separation of concerns, and just like your application, your commands and your queries deal with that kind of stuff. So yeah, hope is that okay? Yeah, cool. Anyone else? Cool.
Have we got anything else for the chat? Nothing.
Cool.
All right. Well, last call for the chat to find anything out. Last call for anyone from here. If anyone has any questions. Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Just quickly as we wrap up, I want to just run through a couple of things. Firstly, thank you to everyone for coming. Really appreciate it. This is actually our highest attended event in person ever. So second of all, I want to thank the people who've made long journeys for this. Particularly, I don't want to name any names, but I know there's a fair few people from the School of Code gang who've come up from Birmingham for this. Every single event. So thank you so much. Really appreciate that from all of you. Lucas normally comes over from Colombia. He's not here tonight, so I'm not going to shout him out. But if you're on the stream, mate, every much appreciated. Literally, before we got the pub, I just want to introduce one thing that I mentioned on the meetup page. I'm not going to get too much into it, but just 2 minutes of your time. Luke here is a consultant at Oscar, and he started something called 2 Pints Deep. I think it's worth 2 minutes of everyone's time just to introduce it, because I really think it's important for everyone. I'll give you 2 minutes of time and then we'll wrap up and go from
there. Hello, I'll introduce you to LinkedIn Luke Barrow before I introduce Luke. So I work at Oscar Tech. I'm a senior consultant and I recruit across web and software development in Yorkshire, the North East and Scotland. Normal Luke. So I lost my mum 2.5 years ago. And it was a difficult time in my life that I did lose her. I was living and working over in Australia, playing football. I'd been there 2 years. And within 2 weeks, life came crashing down around me. So I was living on the beach with my friends and then came home to a point where I had a week left with my mum. And I was then living for a year with my dad in the arse end of nowhere. So it was almost went from here for me. And I really struggled in this period. I went through periods of depression, real prolonged periods of anxiety. And to put it into words, I tried to sort of stay strong and put an outward front on for my dad, realistically, because he was my priority. He just lost his partner of 30 years. And to get to the point from where I am here today, I went to bereavement counselling, and I found that opening up and talking about the way I felt really helped me. And I used to internalize things. I started going to the counselling, and then I got to a point where after a couple of pints, I was able to talk to my friends. I was 2 pints deep. So that got me thinking. I planned this for about 8 months. And in February this year, we released 2 Pints Deep. And this is a community and a anonymous messaging platform made by the average man like me, working 9 to 5 all the time, nothing really special about me, for the average man, for the lads who don't really feel like they can speak up. Now, what sort of initiated this for me is the statistic that suicide is the biggest killer of men under 50, and that every single one of them is avoidable. And that really got to me. So I thought, what can we do? And why is this statistic still rising when the appreciation for men's mental health is also on the rise? Because I do appreciate there's a lot more about it. And I think there's a lot of pages out there at the moment, a lot of areas of social media that are addressing the subject, but also telling you how to get better, or stop drinking, stop doing this, start doing this, do yoga in the morning, have a stretch. It's not relatable for a lot of men. And it's, as we can see with the statistics that haven't gone down, it's not relatable for the men that it needs to be relatable to. So what I've tried to do is create a platform where we can support the men that we're losing by appreciating what they're going through and being relatable and realistic to the situation they're in. So we launched this in February 2022, so a couple of months ago. In the first 7 days, we got 5,000 followers on Instagram from one post, just saying what we wanted to do. And that was just people sharing this on their story. And that really hit home to me in the fact that what we're doing here is needed, and what we're doing here is relatable, and it's going to make a difference. Now, it's a community in the fact that we share people's stories, whether they're good, bad, whether they're still recovering, or whether they are really struggling. We need to make it as realistic as possible and as relatable as possible. And we also share sort of quotes, motivations, my feelings, other people's feelings, and people around me of day-to-day stuff. You can be anxious for no reason, A lot of men try to put a reason to it, and we put ourselves under pressure. And I think verbalizing that is the best way to sort of attack the stat, is the little tagline that I made up. So why am I talking about this to you guys today? Because I think the aspect of remote work, especially for developers, has created an area of loneliness. You can be behind your computer for a long, long time without really having much human contact. And you can get on top of yourself. You can have these thoughts. So I think it's important that we can raise what we've created in it's a non-intrusive platform, in the fact that you can follow this and you don't have to say anything. And that's what we're going to try and do in the future. So we're launching a podcast where we're going to talk about normal things that happen in everyday life, and also issues like gambling, alcohol. I'm not promoting alcohol here, saying it's the only way to get over things, because it's definitely not. But we do need to be relatable, and we need to be realistic, and it needs to be an arm around the man rather than a finger telling him what to do. So we are launching the podcast very soon, and we are also going to start to do meetups where not much is going to be said. We're not going to ask anything of you. No one's going to talk to you, but you'll be able to see the other men that are there and realize I'm part of a community, and the feelings that I have are normal and I'm not alone in this. So if you guys would like to give it a follow, please do. If you feel like it's an important thing that you'd like to share amongst your colleagues, your friends, please do. We're going to hopefully progress in the next few weeks. At the moment, it's just myself, Lauren from our marketing department as well, who's helped me, and my cousin who's done the graphics, which pretty cool. And we've also, he works at Havas Links, and they want to get behind it as well. So we're having areas that are really going to push this, but it will remain for the average man by the average man. And that's something that's really important to me, whether that's the people speaking on the podcast. It needs to be relatable. It needs to be realistic. So that's me. And I'll let you all get to the pub, but thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Luke, for that. I don't want to add more to it because I think he said everything that needs to be said on that front. Obviously, we did say we're going now. I just want to do a quick shout out to everyone who's volunteered to stay behind and clean up for this, because I really do appreciate it, because I feel like me going to the pub with the card is a massive cop-out. I'm still going to be going to the pub with the card, but still. So for anyone who would like to join us after this, we're going to the Ralph Abercrombie pub. It's basically, if you come out the front door, take a left at the crossroads. It's under the archway between Brewdog and Rudy's. If you go under that archway, you'll see the pub straight away. I'm going there now. Oscar have very kindly contributed a few £100 behind the bar, so I'll be able to get everyone a drink. But thank you very much to everyone for coming. I would really appreciate if we could make everyone's lives easier. If you've got bottles of rubbish or anything like that, please just stack them on that side, because it saves them so much hassle. But thanks, everyone. This has been the biggest and best event we've had so far, and I can't wait to see where the community goes.